individuals to
So
decide
how
how
many-
best to move forward. But what I will say is this, and if I could finish, Mr.
I'm
Chair.
going to pause again here.
In fact,
going,
although
Minister,
this-
I'm going to jump in because you're going far afield of the question. What we have here is cultural appropriation leading to financial misappropriation. That is, you have people that are pretending to be Indigenous in order to get money that they're not supposed to be accessing. And it is precisely this.
Hey gang, what's up? Just Aaron right here, Canadian Looney. Beautiful morning here in Nova Scotia. It is chilly. You can see the frost, all the leaves are down. Guess what's not down and happening in committee? We're not getting answers from Minister Patty HAJDU. Watch this lady at work. These liberal tactics are for the birds, which none seem to be chirping now. They were watching with Patty HAJDU when they flew somewhere else. Let's take a look at Patty HAJDU going against the Conservatives, not answering questions. This lady is a troll. Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah.
Move to Mr. Schmale for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses. Minister HAJDU, as you know, friendship centres are a crucial part of the Indigenous landscape, and their core funding is set to expire. What assurances can you give this committee that they will receive an answer before March 31st?
Well, thank you very much through the chair. And I'll just say that we've worked incredibly hard to support Indigenous friendship centres, and we're very proud of the relationship that we have, and we'll continue to be working with them to make sure that they can continue to deliver the services to urban Indigenous peoples.
So we have a positive answer here?
I can tell you that this government has been very
confident.
supportive of Indigenous friendship centres and will continue to do that. It's actually kind of exciting to hear a Conservative member talk about core funding. And
Well, I'm glad you're excited
I'm
because
really
I'm excited
to
because
hear
I
that
also want
that's
to
your
talk about
vision.
Indigenous procurement, which is actually
I'll look
something.
forward to your support of my budget letter.
We'll see about that. Indigenous procurement. So a few months ago, you had talked about the Indigenous Business Directory being one that determines whether or not a business is Indigenous or not. Now, today, you were saying it's to help create jobs in the Indigenous community. Regardless of your stance that has changed, it looks like we have a new company here, the Canadian Healthcare Agency, that has managed to secure funding over $100 million that meets neither of those criteria. Why?
So let me just be clear that the Indigenous Business Directory is there to support procurement from Indigenous businesses. That is the entire purpose of the list.
So how did this Canadian Health Agency
And the
get
value
in?
statement behind that list is that this government believes that Indigenous economic development is incredibly important, and that First Nations Indigenous partners have not had the same
No, I
opportunities
got
to
that.
participate
You
in the
mentioned that
procurement of
earlier. I
Canada.
got
And so
that.
to reach the procurement target, we support different departments to understand who might be
Perfect.
eligible for being considered Indigenous.
That's great. So the Canadian Healthcare Agency, it meets neither of the two changing statements you have made. How did they continue to get additional contracts from the federal government out of the Indigenous procurement angle when they were not Indigenous majority owned? How did it miss that?
So there are, as I would say, the list is curated to make sure that it includes people's companies as those companies change in formation. So certain companies may have Indigenous partners at times and may reform, and the Indigenous partners may sell their shares. I'm sure you understand this. I understand the Conservatives are the party of big business and understand how business works, but you do know that businesses change their ownership structures and
over $100 million to a company
I will say that this particular business
neither of those boxes.
has also provided important health services to First Nations for First Nations people in community.
Mr. Chair, I've raised this before, and I don't think I'm the only one that has this challenge, but anybody wearing a headset, including the interpreters, can't follow when there's more than one voice over the microphones. Hopefully we can find a way to resolve it, because I can't follow what's going on with the way it's going on.
Thank you very much for raising that, Mr. McLeod. You're absolutely right in this. With the crosstalk that's happening does need to stop here. So I'll just remind all members for for those with challenges hearing as well as with those that, or for our interpreters, just consider their health when you're considering talking over another person in this. And I have paused the time. There is another 2 minutes left for Mr. Smale, and I'll pass the floor back to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. So at 2016, this company had an audit that showed very clearly that none of these boxes are being checked. So given that the AFN at their another committee's meeting have talked about most of these Indigenous contracts have gone out to shell companies that are not Indigenous owned, nor are they creating jobs for Indigenous people, how do you continue to stand behind this program?
Well, I think, Mr. Chair, I've been clear that the program is currently, considered under review with First Nations partners about how to better deal with the challenge of proving indigeneity. And I'll just say this, proving indigeneity is deeply rooted in a colonial structure of deciding who's Indigenous or not. We've been working with a number of Indigenous business partners, including a number of esteemed individuals to decide how best to move forward. But what I will say is this, and if I could finish, Mr. Chair.
I'm going to pause again here. We just, Mr. McLeod just brought this point up. This is going to be a problem, and this very much needs to stop. So with that, I'm going to pass the floor back to Mr. Smale. You have about 50 seconds left.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. How many businesses have been removed from this list?
What I can say, Mr. Chair, is that this list provides a very important tool to the Government of Canada to ensure Indigenous economic development continues to be driven through a procurement process. And I want to quote Philip Ducharme.
So how many have been removed? Just a ballpark.
I'd like to quote,
Okay,
Mr. Chair, I'm looking for your direction. You'll have to.
I'm going to pause again here.
She's not answering the question. I only got 50 seconds.
There's about 25 seconds left. I want to give Mr. Smale the opportunity to ask his question and for the minister to answer it.
Okay, now the Canadian Health Care Agency, can they still apply for contracts under this program?
Well, any company can still apply for contracts, but they would not be included on the list as indicating that they are an Indigenous-owned business.
So just since 2016, then?
What I would say is that indigeneity and capacity to procure from the Government of Canada are two separate considerations. And they would not be counted as an Indigenous business if they're not on the Indigenous business list. And I would say that it's important to understand that businesses can change in ownership. And if that's the case, or if a business is flagged, as Dalian was by Procurement Canada, as needing to be removed as a result of significant security status breach, that those things would be immediately acted
Colleagues,
on.
I'm going to step in again here. The time is up. Shields, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dealing with housing, Minister, can you tell me how many new housing units have been built?
Well, I can tell you that we've increased funding by 1,300% since we took office, and right now we're supporting the construction, renovation, and retrofit of over 36,000 homes. And we're co-developing a 10-year housing and infrastructure strategy. And of course, this is it's work that we are continuing through investments for housing and infrastructure through Budget 2024.
I'm just looking for a split on the number of new houses, not the renovations, just the number of new houses.
I don't have that number for you, but we'll make sure your office gets it.
Thank you. I'll turn the time over to Garnet.
Thank you. Minister HAJDU, my colleague earlier asked about a case involving Canadian Health Care Agency. They are a non-Indigenous company, very clearly. They were able, nonetheless, to take advantage of contracts that were supposed to go to Indigenous companies because they entered into a joint venture. Their partner in the joint venture was a one-person company, and that one person happened to be an employee of the company. So they said, hey, let's go into joint venture with one of our employees, and therefore we will call ourselves an Indigenous partnership, even though this is a totally non-Indigenous company. Can we at least agree that this is a clear instance of an abuse of the program? Would you agree that this is an abuse of the program?
I would say that the quote from Philip Ducharme, who's the VP of CCIB, is very important here. And he said, "We cannot allow a few bad actors to cause us to move backwards on crucial support mechanisms designed to uplift
Minister, let me just jump
communities."
in, because I've engaged actively with the CCIB, and we've brought them to the Government Operations Committee, and I agree that that the objectives of supporting Indigenous economic development, I agree with their objectives. But I want to ask you the question that I asked you already, which is, do you think this particular case is an instance of a bad apple?
Well, they have been removed from the IBD, and I think that's an important indication.
But
I
was
think
this
that's
an abuse of the program?
indication of exactly why that list is important, because in fact, and why integrity matters.
Minister, was this an abuse of the program, though? I mean, I guess you're saying they were removed, so clearly it was an abuse of the program in your view. But you seem unwilling to say yes. Was this an abuse of the program?
I would say it was an abuse of being on the list without without adequate
So should they pay the money back that they received under the Indigenous procurement program?
Well, I think that in the case of this particular healthcare agency, two things can be true at one time. And the second thing that's true is that we have a nationwide nursing shortage. You may have heard of this. Actually, you do get up and talk about this occasionally.
Yeah,
Minister,
I'm going to jump in because you're going far afield of the question. What we have here is cultural appropriation leading to financial misappropriation. That is, you have people that are pretending to be Indigenous in order to get money that they're not supposed to be accessing. And it is precisely this that has led the AFN to say that a majority of companies, in their view, that are getting these opportunities that are established in this set-aside, a majority of those companies, according to the AFN, are shell companies. So do you see the problem here? And do you agree that that your government needs to be accountable for this failure?
What I see clearly is a plan for conservative cuts around a program that actually is about Indigenous economic development. But I will say this,
Minister,
Chair,
could you answer the question?
Mr. Chair, could I finish?
So,
let me ask you this,
Mr. GENUIS, I pause your time here again. So you've got about 45 seconds left. I think we're all very interested in hearing the answers of the ministers here, so please do give the minister a time to respond to the question, and I will give you back your 45 seconds, but just with that proviso.
Yeah, Chair, let me just ask very, very precisely. If you have an instance of cultural appropriation leading to financial misappropriation, that is someone pretending to be Indigenous, getting on the list, getting money that's supposed to be there for Indigenous communities, should they have to pay back the money that they took? Simple yes or no. Should they have to pay the money back, yes or no?
If a company is found to have breached contract provisions, that is an option for departments that have utilized that
Should
company.
they have to pay the money back,
and
yes or no?
What I will say
yes
is
or
that
no?
it is clear that the Conservatives want to get rid of this
program. Will you say yes or no?
This is
Should they have to pay the money back?
They do not want to do. They do not want to support Indigenous
Should they have to
economic
pay the money
success,
back? Yes or no,
and
Minister?
we should all be very
Yes
clear
or no,
about what the
Minister?
intentions of the Conservative
Yes or no,
Party
Minister?
is.
Pause this. This is enough of the crosstalk. I'll just give the minister the opportunity to answer this question. We're already over time, but I just want to give her the opportunity to answer that.
Yes or no?
Contracts have been breached, then departments have the ability to take appropriate action.
Chair, I have a point of order I'd like to raise. Now, there are clearly established rules about the obligations of witnesses at committees to answer questions. Those rules apply to ministers. It's not like in question period where the Speaker doesn't enforce rules around the content of the answers. There is a requirement. It is a matter of parliamentary privilege that witnesses have to answer questions that are asked. Now, I've been through 2 rounds, and the minister hasn't answered a single question that I've asked. And quite specifically, in the last round, I've asked a simple question to the minister. So I'd like to ask you, it doesn't matter if it's a minister or someone else, but to call our witnesses to order and expect them to provide answers to the questions that are being asked.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Carr, on the same point of order.
Yeah, I respect my colleague and his point of view, but as we've said many times before, receiving the response that you want and receiving a response are two different things. So hopefully you'll take that into consideration as you reply to my colleague across the way.
Yeah, just on that, I mean, I won't tease Mr. Carr too much about being a new member. I know he's earnestly throwing himself into things here, but the rules do establish at committees a requirement to provide answers. Doesn't mean I have to like the answer, but there has to be an answer to the question. You can't just talk after the other person talks about things that are totally unrelated. Those are the rules.
So I see that.
So we're going to wrap this committee video up right there. Patty HAJDU, what a mess. These committee meetings, it's really hard to get answers from the ministers when they testify. It's embarrassing. My name's Aaron, Canadian Looney. Like, subscribe, share, get notified, all those fun things. And come watch our videos. They're great. We're learning about Canadian federal politics, sharing that with you. Thank you for watching this video. Check you out in the next one. Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah.